Well, guys, I'm a little bit late to the party, but I'm here with some thoughts on Zenless Zone Zero. I'm going to go over everything that I have been thinking up to this point in the game. For a little bit of context, I'm at about level 20 as of time of recording, and I have gotten through Chapter 1, the chapter where Nekomiya has her arc and the main Cunning Hare's arc. So I am going to go over everything that I've experienced, give you my thoughts, where I think this game is headed, if it's headed in a good direction, and what I think about all the different aspects of it. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. We're going to be breaking this stuff down point by point, and I will give you a thorough description of my thoughts. Let's start with the story. Now, I'm going to talk about the story in two parts. I'm going to address it as far as the plot goes and as far as the characters go, because in my opinion, they are very different levels of quality. So, for the plot, I think it is a bit messy. I don't think it's particularly the best written thing in the world. Let me give you a couple examples to illustrate what I mean. In the very first scene of the game, where we get introduced to the Cunning Hares and they're trying to escape from the Red Fang gang, we see a very contrived scene play out. So they enter the room, they're trying to escape, they're blocked by this bulletproof glass window, and Billy tries to shoot the window with a bullet. That bullet luckily hits the window, bounces off, hits a cable, knocks something off the ceiling that then knocks him out. This happens to be the perfect spot, as we'll see in a second. Silver and his men then come in. They don't notice him at all, despite the bright red jacket on the floor. And Silver just so happens to be carrying with him a flash grenade, something that is ideal for the Cunning Hares to get the attention of public security. So, Billy's in the perfect spot. Silver just so happens to have the perfect signal to get them out of the situation, and Billy got there because of some stupidity and extreme luck. Now this is some pretty contrived writing, and I would hope for better, and seeing this in the opening scene put me at a bit of unease about where this plot would be going and how good it would be. Let me give you another example of something that is very convenient that happens in the story. So, in the midst of Chapter 1, in this Nekomiya arc, the Cunning Hares are looking for Nekomiya's heirloom. Nekomiya supposedly sees a child and attempts to lure them into the area where the dead-end butcher is to try and kill them in an act of revenge. This is fine. This is character motivated. There's no reason why this shouldn't happen. But they happen to actually stumble upon a child that meets the exact description that Nekomiya made up. They also meet the child at the perfect time to avoid the dead-end butcher. And this also allows them to go to the community and leads to the rest of the plot pretty much happening. This child also happens to be the only one in the entire community that has ether resistance. And I see this as a massive convenience in order to progress the story and get them into the community and start and continue to build Nekomiya's feelings of empathy for the Cunning Hare's plight. So those are just a couple of examples, but these are the kind of things that I don't like happening in plots, where the writers use entire, lucky scenarios, like it's strings of luck after luck after luck in order to progress things in the way that they want to. I think they can do a better job, is basically the point. If this was all the story was, I would consider it to be fairly poor, not particularly interesting, and not particularly well written. But fortunately, the characters in this game are a treat to be around, especially by gacha game standards. And if they weren't this fun to be around, I would probably be having a far worse time playing this game. Now this is mostly held up by the way that the story is presented, as well as the pretty much stellar voice acting across the cast. I have to shout out Wise in particular. I really like his voice actor. I hate the character design, but I love the way that he speaks. It's a very, cool, composed tone. Yeah, the voice acting has been very good across the board. This game also has the best animations for both characters just talking to one another, as well as cutscenes in general. The animations are bouncy, they're super expressive, and it endears you to the characters very quickly. The comic strips also help with this. The comics allow them to use expressions that they don't have built into the game animations, and you can get some really cool distorted views of characters that help inform their personalities that you couldn't otherwise. So overall, I think the characters are just far more expressive and fun to be around than in other gacha games of this type. No longer are we in the days of Genshin where it's just a talking head that is not lip-synced and has 3 different poses that it can take in order to express emotions. It feels far less like we're talking to robots than we used to. There's also the massive benefit of most of these characters talking like actual human beings for once. There is definitely some expositing here and there, particularly with the twins and how these systems work and some of the hacker jargon and getting us used to the world. But for the most part, things are a lot better than in other Hoyo games. For example, dialogue in HSR can often sound like characters are reading a novel or a philosophy book instead of having a conversation. And because of that, this dialogue feels much more easy to consume and much more like they're actual people, is what I would say. As far as character development goes, we haven't had much, as far as I have gotten to, besides Nekomiya. I think her arc, in particular, is pretty solid. Going from seeking revenge on the Cunning Hares to eventually spending time with them and getting to know them, and seeing how they operate and realizing that, hey, these people, maybe they're not so bad. Maybe they are good people after all, and they're out for the benefit of others, despite the money hungriness on the surface. Now, is this the most complex arc in the world? No. But I think all the pieces are there to make it pretty believable, and I was fairly invested in it. So, hopefully we continue to get more character development. Character development is something that doesn't happen as much as it probably should in Hoyo games, so hopefully with each arc we get a central character like this, and they can have something to hook us in, get us invested in that particular character. The other characters, while they don't have a huge amount of development, are very fun to watch. Many have a sort of quirk, like they do in other gacha games, like for example, Anby loves movies, and she'll quote random things and tropes within movies during the action scenes. But this is not the only thing that these characters are. They have other features besides their one quirky thing. Anby is quiet, but she's also very confident. She backs herself over all her teammates, and she also displays that she is willing to pretty much do anything in order to protect good people, despite what her companions think. And just things like this, adding more layers onto the personalities of these characters, makes me think that they are more interesting and are going to be more deep in the long run, as the more we explore their personalities and their motivations and what they think about other people. Now, we will see how things progress as I continue 1.0 and how the story continues in the future, but as of now, I am quite happy with our main cast of characters. If the plot continues to improve on the luck and conveniences that I mentioned, and it becomes a bit more consistent and less convenient, then I could see this becoming one of my favorite gachas for story. Let's talk about the combat. Now, there's a lot of discussion about the combat. I will give you my 2 cents as far as what I've played so far. If you just mash click, and then you wait for the enemy to flash yellow and parry, I think you will find this combat pretty boring and uninteresting. And you will probably beat most of the content fairly easily. If you play the game this way and you dislike it for that reason, then fair enough. Play however you want. I think that's valid if you find it boring to play that way. But, personally, I have been enjoying combat quite a bit so far. Because as soon as you try to optimize some of your combos and rotations, you have a lot more to think about other than when is the next yellow glow going to happen and I'm going to have to press my spacebar. As an example, I have been playing Anby quite a bit. And instead of doing her 1, 2, 3 in my mind, I tend to use her animation as a tell as to when I should be pressing my E or pressing my mouse again after the wait. This will sometimes take my eye off the enemy, because I'm thinking about other things, and occasionally I will get punished. Now, this is not a hard punish, and it definitely doesn't make the game difficult by any means, but thinking about these sort of things gives the game a bit more of a dynamic. Now, are the bosses and enemies easy even on hard mode? So far, yes. But I am still having a lot of fun figuring out how to best utilize my team and the characters' kits. In general, the combat is very smooth, and it feels good to play for me. So, while it is easy, at the very least I see the potential of this combat system. If enemies in the endgame have more diverse sets of moves, and if characters continue to come out in the gacha that have more complex kits, so the likes of Ellen, then I think this combat has a lot of potential to be very interesting and very fun down the line. One thing that I don't love about combat is that certain characters are just better with one another. If you're running an ice team, you probably want Sokaku to buff up your ice damage, and synergies like that. It feels like you kind of are set. It feels like if you want to have the best, most optimal damage, there are very set teams that you will have to use for certain characters. In a perfect world, I would like to be able to combine pretty much any character I want and have something semi-viable. But unfortunately, with this being a gacha, they need to make niches so that future characters can serve a purpose in the meta and are not just immediately power-crept. Let's talk about the other main form of gameplay, the TV system. The TVs are definitely a big point of discussion, and I think they are an interesting topic. All I heard from the beta testers was, TV's bad, these things suck, we need to have less of these things. And to be fair, the initial puzzles that I have done are not exactly exciting. I never find myself doing the TV section and being thrilled. However, as of yet, they have not been terribly long to the point that I am completely bored. Would I prefer it if there were less of the TVs, or if the puzzles took an ounce of my IQ to complete? Of course. But as of yet, as I am not too far into it, I am not as much of a doomer on the system as it seems like a lot of other people are. In my mind, there is a lot that you can do with this format. It's essentially just a grid in which the devs can put pretty much whatever they want, because creating stuff for the TV system has a really low development cost. There are plenty of tile-based games that are, frankly, fantastic, particularly in the realm of old-school RPGs and RTS games. Now, will the devs ever implement something on the level of those games? Probably not. The audience is still casual and they want to appeal to them, and implementing something that complex might scare people away. But nonetheless, there is still a lot of potential here. There's a lot of things you can do with just a plain grid system. There's a lot of room for the developers to do creative things with the TVs in the future. Have they done it so far with what I've played? Not particularly. It's nothing crazy interesting or hard to do, but I see the potential if they continue to progress this system down the line. Let's talk about the gacha and the reward structure of the game. So the gacha in this game is pretty much the same as the Genshin system. It's passable, obviously it's very predatory, and never something I would prefer to be in my games, but it does come with the typical pros. If you're playing free-to-play, like myself, you will have to work with the resources that you have, which can be fun in resource managing, and it will make your account feel a bit more unique compared to other people, because the characters and abilities that you have access to are basically completely random. As far as rewards go, it feels like I've been getting less currency than in previous Hoyo titles, and the rewards feel particularly harsh after how much Wuthering Waves showered its players in currency. I think this is basically because there's no form of exploration. There's a little bit of currency you can get around the hubs. There's some small bits that you can get within the TVs, and there's also, like, achievements that you can hunt, but nothing is giving you a large amount of currency compared to, like, exploration in the open world gachas. The fact that they have to have 2 events with free 10 pulls tells me that there is either a lack of rewards in the game in general, or Hoyo was really concerned about how many rewards the Wuthering Waves devs gave out at the beginning of the game. I am unsure of exactly how many pulls you can get and how many I should be able to get in 1.0, but it feels like it is less than the Hoyo standard. We will see if that continues, and especially if things tend to dry up in future patches. That will be when this potentially becomes a larger issue. One more thing I would like to mention about the gacha. W engines are basically the filler item in the gacha system, and I know that they are functionally basically the same as weapons in other games, like 3-star weapons, but I find them incredibly uninteresting, mostly because they blend together. Now, some of the 3 stars are usable. They have decent passives that you can use for your characters, but the fact that I'm just saying ball after ball after ball can become very tedious, and I tend to be bored unless I see that there's a character. I am just scrolling through ball, 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 and the animation is pretty long, and I feel like they are just not interesting enough to keep the gacha fun. I mean, just being able to see different designs of, like, swords or bows or whatever weapon is a lot more interesting than what we're getting here. This is probably the worst filler item as far as aesthetic that I have seen in a gacha game of this variety. Alright, let's talk about what I have experienced as far as the daily routine, the stuff you will be doing after the game has been out for a while and you just log in. So far, it seems to not be quite as easy as Star Rail. Star Rail, you just come in, you dump your stamina, you get basically everything you need on the Battle Pass just from that, as well as your dailies, and then you can log out. It takes no time at all, you can autoplay it. It is ideal as far as daily systems go in my mind. In this game, they have you doing some dumb stuff, like taking pictures of cats, or eating noodles that you have no interest in, but overall, the daily loop seems to be pretty easy to manage. It'll take a little bit longer than Star Rail. You have to actively play to use your stamina, but it doesn't take too long. Even at a lower level, it's taking me like 30 seconds to clear some of the stages to dump my stamina, which is, 2 minutes total. It's nothing too crazy. This is a good thing in my mind. I don't want to be dedicating too much time to the game when content's dry, or I'm just too busy to log in. I think this is the same for many other people. Now I just want to make some statements on a few of the smaller things that I just had thoughts on, but don't have like a full section for. These will be in no particular order, just some thoughts that I want to throw out there. The music in the game is godlike. I have a standing desk now, and I feel like I'm shaking ass at pretty much every new tune that I hear. Enough said there. Something I wish was a bit different is the combat rating system. I wish it was something a bit more punishing. In the realm of Devil May Cry, it feels like I'm getting S on pretty much every combat sequence that I do, and I'm not always playing it perfectly. I'm sometimes getting hit, I'm sometimes not playing my characters the best that I could, I'm forgetting to hit an E when I stun an enemy, or something like that, and yet I still get an S. And I feel like this kind of defeats the purpose of having a style meter. You want it to give players some motivation to optimize their combos and utilize their characters without having to give a reward system to back it up. But currently it's just kind of a pat on the back, hey, you did okay, and let's move on to the next thing. It just seems like a missed opportunity to try and get the people who are more invested in the combat system to try and optimize to its fullest extent. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I think the menus look fantastic. They've significantly condensed the screens for characters compared to other Hoyo games, which is a massive upgrade. In particular, menus like the Mindscape Cinema and the character selection screen look fantastic. They're very stylized. I find them still very easy to navigate. and overall I'm very happy with the UI. Another thing that I think I should point out is that the NPCs look great. They have a lot of personality just in their designs, and it makes the hub worlds a lot more charming. There's also a lot of little things that you can do in the hub world. You can set up your photo board, you can go through and manage your shop, you can go to all of the different people and talk to them and get yourself a coffee and it'll play the cool coffee animation. There's the noodle guy. Just a lot of little things to season up the hub worlds, and they feel very full and lively, especially compared to other games where they don't have as condensed worlds and they can't really afford to put this much detail and character into their cities. And one final thing I wanted to mention, I am very happy with the A rank characters in this game so far. I think that they have lower damage output, although I can't confirm that for sure, that's just my assumption. But I have found them all pretty fun to play. I've been playing with Anby as my main stunner, and she's been very fun to try and optimize the 1, 2, 3, and then hit your special, to try and break the enemy, hit an E, proc all the chain attacks, and just get everything going. Anyway, that is all the thoughts I have for now, after the first few days of playing. I know I'm a bit late to this, but hopefully the level of detail I went in on all these things should help you get an understanding of where I'm at. I will probably do some updated thoughts once I get further into the game, maybe after I complete all the story content and do some of the endgame modes. But for now, I am relatively happy. I see the potential. I don't love the TVs. I like the combat and I think it's heading in the right direction. I don't love the plot, but I love interacting with the characters and the way the story is told, and there's a lot of small things to compliment here. So, I'm not going to give this a final rating. I haven't completed all the content in the game, but as of right now, I am fairly happy playing Zenless Zone Zero. That's all. Thanks for watching, and take care, ladies and gentlemen.